Hello, nerds! Nerds for Humanity. We have the unboxing of the Georgia indictment, the fourth indictment of former President Donald John Trump. And unlike many other news sources, we're not just going to talk about it and give opinions, but we are going to unbox the original documentation, the actual indictment itself, and look at some of the highlights. So if you're ready, strap on your seatbelts because I'm sure it's going to be crazy. And let me know in the chat where you're joining us from. Hello, Jackson, a member. Channel members, gotta love them. Hello, nerds. All right. So let me know in chat where you're from. And as you're watching this, if you're finding this useful, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And if you want to see more stuff like this and you're not subscribed, because maybe you're watching this on replay and it got recommended to you after the fact, hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified next time I go live. Okay, so here it is. This is the actual indictment. In full disclosure, we're going to look at, oh, Jonathan, hello from Orlando. Good to see you, Jonathan. We are looking at the New York Times annotated version, but it is the original documentation. I know some of you are like, what? The failing New York Times? In reality, New York Times is doing quite well. But it's a funny name that Trump always used to refer to them. Now, this is Fulton Superior Court, the state of Georgia versus a whole long list of people. Donald John Trump, Rudolph William Louis Giuliani, John Charles Eastman, Mark Randall, Ron, Mark Randall Meadows, Ken Cheeseborough, let's see, oh, Jenna Ellis. Who else is down here? I don't know if I'll say Sean. I don't know if who these other people are. Oh, Sidney Powell. So they've got a long list of people, and there are a lot of counts. Violation of the Racketeering and Corrupt Organizations Act, solicitation of violation of oath, false statements, solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, solicitation of violent oath, false statements, impersonating a public officer, conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, forgery, conspiracy to commit forgery, false statements, conspiracy to commit false statements, criminal attempt to commit filing false documents, conspiring to commit filing false documents, forgery. I mean, it just goes on and on. Like, this is how the Trump organization rolls. Jackson is joining us from Colorado Springs. And thank you again, Jackson, for being a channel member. You helped make this content possible. A whole, Jesus, how many counts are there? 41. Oh, perjury. Yikes. Signed by the grand jury foreperson, which is to say, as many of you know, a grand jury, it's not like some, Democratic Party leader decided to indict Donald J. Trump. This evidence was presented to a grand jury of regular citizens, and I think it's a majority of them said there's enough here that this should go to court. Well, let's see, what are they accusing him of in more detail? So, some highlights. It is possible that Meadows and Giuliani might challenge the indictment on grounds that they were forced to testify before a special grand jury that was previously investigating Trump's election interference. In general, prosecutors cannot force someone who is a target of an investigation to testify before grand jury. Oh, that's interesting. because they were forced to testify, they could say, hey, because I testified, you can't also make me a target. Interesting. I guess they will try whatever they can to get out of this. Let's see what's next on this. This is a long document. Okay. Table of contents. Let's see. While the alleged racketeering activity comprises the meat of the indictment, prosecutors also charged 40 other crimes, including false statements, forgery, impersonating public officer, and soliciting public officers to violate their oaths. 40 counts, brothers and sisters. Jesus, 41. Count 1 is the whole list with the offense of violation of the Georgia RICO Act for the said accused individually as persons concerned in commission of a crime. On and between the 4th day of November 20th and the 15th of September 2022, while associated with an enterprise, unlawfully conspired and endeavored to conduct and participate in, directly and indirectly, such enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity as described below. Okay, so one thing to note is that it is, and thank you to Jonah Bromwich for calling this out, it is remarkable to see Mr. Giuliani charged under a state version of the Federal Racketeering Act, because this is the guy who in the 1980s basically made those RICO charges famous because he used it himself as a tool to go after the mob. And now he is being accused of mob-like activity himself. Okay. The sprawling nature of the case was made clear not only by the 19 named defendants, but by the inclusion of 30 unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators. Yikes. Okay, unlawful breach of election equipment. Oh my God, dude. So a lot of us know about them saying the election was stolen and claiming there was all this evidence of fraud. We know that that was BS. And, you know, by the way, if you're a Trump lover and you're like, that's not BS, Tom. The election was stolen. There was fraud, massive scale. Well, guess what? Your man is going to have his day in court. And I'm sure that if he has all of this smoking gun, you know, clear as day, 10 ways to see fraud here, evidence, he can bring that up and show a jury that, look, I was right to fight this election outcome because here's all the evidence I found. My guess is he's not going to come through with it because he knows it's a bunch of malarkey. Lou's joining us from Philly. Hello, Lou. Okay. But we know that's all BS. But the breach of election equipment is kind of a new storyline. I don't think a lot of people have heard about this one. So what are they being accused of? Members of the criminal enterprise, including several of the defendants, corruptly conspired in Fulton County and elsewhere to unlawfully access secure voting equipment and voter data. Can you imagine if Hillary's campaign had broken into like a state's voting data and voting equipment? Members of the enterprise stole data, including ballot images, voting equipment software, and personal voter information. It was then distributed to other members of the enterprise, including members in other states. So the claim that Mr. Trump's allies were involved in a plan to unlawfully gain access to secure voting equipment and voter data is a new criminal allegation that the Justice Department's indictment did not include. So this is new kind of bad behavior by your favorite so-called patriot and lover of the Constitution, but then is the same guy who kind of torches it every other day. Okay, another highlight. Prosecutors put together a racketeering indictments like this one by collecting individual actions known as overt acts that are meant to further the goal of a larger conspiracy. On its own, each act may not be a separate crime, but when they all are considered together, the overt acts can help prosecutors tell a detailed story of how many steps went into a complex crime. So, for example, on about the day of November 4th, Donald Trump made a nationally televised speech falsely declaring victory. Approximately 4 days earlier, he discussed a draft speech with unindicted co-conspirator 1, whose identity is known to the grand jury, that falsely declared victory and falsely claimed voter fraud. So this is very important. Pay attention. He basically prepared a speech accusing the Democrats of committing voter fraud on October 31st. Which, as you know, is before the election happened. So he was basically ready and waiting to use his, the dog ate my homework excuse, right? The Dems ate my homework. It's ridiculous. Now, along with being named the second defendant, Giuliani is the second person listed in the overt acts section, which describes statements he made about fraud being committed in Fulton County. Then you had this amazing Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell, who were known as an elite strike force. I watched this press conference, made false statements concerning fraud, presidential election in Georgia and elsewhere. Those were overt acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. The elite strike force, gotta love it. But what about this one? Okay. Next. Yep, this is the one where Giuliani's hair dye ran down his face, and Sidney Powell promoted the theory that Dominion voting had been hacked to help Mr. Trump win. And as you may want to remind your favorite MAGA, extreme MAGA people, that all of that BS about Dominion getting hacked resulted... I don't think it was at the Four Seasons landscaping office. This one was like in like some like crowded kind of basement looking press conference, and it was sad. I mean, Sidney Powell is just crazy. But yeah, so if all of you have any extreme MAGA friends who are still belly aching about Dominion, ask them why Fox News paid Dominion $1 billion in settlement if all they did was tell the truth. Why do you have to pay $1 billion to a company? Nobody talks about that. In fact, my own MAGA family, I asked them about that settlement. They said, oh, I don't think that happened. It's like, yeah, it did, but you probably didn't hear it on Fox News. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. Okay, then on the 20th of November, Donald Trump and Mark Meadows met with the majority leader of the Michigan Senate, Speaker of the Michigan House, and other Michigan legislators in the Oval Office. And Donald Trump made false statements concerning fraud in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Michigan. Giuliani joined by telephone. The meeting was an overt act of furtherance of this conspiracy, because as we all know, if there was any evidence of this fraud in Michigan, they would have brought it to a court and they would have shown this evidence, but they've lost every single court case. They're like 0 for 60. And it's sad. It's just sad. The whole law and order people, they do just keep losing in court because none of their crazy theories like Pizzagate or whatever have any evidence. Anyway. Okay. Ooh. The indictment lists Mr. Trump and other defendants as members of a criminal organization. And one of that organization's acts is making false statements to legislators both in Georgia and elsewhere That's one reason the overt acts include items like this one, in which Mr. Meadows seeks out a telephone number for the leader of the Pennsylvania Senate. Can you send me the number of the speaker and leader of the PA legislature? POTUS wants to chat with them. Again, when you're the president and you're calling state legislatures and you're calling your fellow Republicans and you've got Rudy Giuliani saying, look, there's fraud all over the place, like you're twisting arms to get those states to basically overturn the will of their own voters. Jackson makes a very good point. Hey, BTS. Jackson makes a very good point. Tucker Carlson literally argued in court that no reasonable person would believe him, so he can't be held responsible. And he won. And I think Sidney Powell said the same thing, that no reasonable person would ever believe her about her claims that the election was stolen. All right, let's keep going. Okay, on the third day of December, Giuliani, Eastman, Ellis, Smith committed the felony offense of solicitation of violations of oath by a public officer by soliciting, requesting, and importuning public officers then serving as elected members of the Georgia Senate and present at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting, including unindicted co-conspirator 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and a whole bunch of other people, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation oath of a public officer by unlawfully appointing presidential electors from Georgia. This is when they came up with their own slate of electors. Like, seriously, this is a democracy, and these extreme MAGA people's leaders try to create fake electors. Like, crazy talk. Who does this? Who? And people are like, oh, what about Hillary? She was complaining when she lost. It's like, yeah, bro, she complained. Number one, she conceded. Number two, when she did complain, I don't think she created fake electors and called state legislatures to try and have them overturn the votes of their own people. So this notion of equivalence between Hillary complaining about losing and Trump trying to conspire to overturn election and basically steal the presidency, they are not comparable. They're totally not comparable. So, like, that's just, no, not comparable. If you think they're comparable, let me know in the comments why you think Hillary Clinton complaining about, oh, maybe the Russians influenced the election or whatever, which we know from the Republican Senate Intelligence Committee that the Russians did interfere with the election. But even putting that aside, you tell me that the Clintons did this crap to try and overturn an election. You know that's not true. Okay. Next. Okay, on about the 3rd of December, Donald Trump caused to be tweeted from the Twitter account at Real Donald Trump. Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia. Ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the large counting room. Plenty more coming. But this alone leads to an easy win of the state. This also was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, because now we know there was no evidence. And again, if all of this evidence exists, it will be amazing. I will be the first to apologize to all the extreme MAGA and all the Trump loyalists, like, oh, wow, you guys did bring evidence of all of this fraud, and it held up to cross-examination and rules of law. But I think we all know that if there were evidence, we'd have seen it by now. Instead, we have like random sort of highly edited videos on the internet. Okay, next. On the 6th of December 2020, Robert Shealy sent an email to John Eastman and unindicted co-conspirator 8, whose identity is known. Quote, I am working on setting up a call for you with the speaker and president pro tempore tomorrow. I am also making the leadership aware of the importance for Trump electors to meet on December 14th. Please provide the citation to the requirements of the duties which they must comply with. This is basically conspiring to have fake electors. Like, remember, each state has electoral college votes. Like, they get these electors that sign saying, okay, I'm giving my vote to Biden or Trump, and it reflects what the people voted. These pieces of work came up with their own freaking electors. They basically like, yeah, we're not going to use the actual ones. We're coming up with our own. Unbelievable. This page exemplifies the way in which Giuliani served as a hub in the wheel of the conspiracy. In 3 different overt acts, Giuliani is described as receiving emails or making a phone call to try to turn things around for his client, Mr. Trump. On the 7th day of December, Eastman sent an email to Giuliani with an attached memorandum titled, The Real Deadline for Sending a State's Electoral Votes. The body of the email stated, here's the memo we discussed. The memo was written by Ken Cheesebro to Don Troupis and advocates for the position that Trump presidential elector nominees in Wisconsin should meet and cast votes for Trump on December 14th, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in Wisconsin. This email was another act in furtherance of the conspiracy. So it's not just Georgia. I mean, they really were totally doing a multi-state. They worked so hard to stay in power. Imagine how hard they could have worked to even like finish the wall that they had promised or give us a better version of healthcare. Remember, he said it was going to be better and cheaper than Obamacare, and we would get it like in the first year. Like, did anybody else see that? I didn't see any of that delivered. But my God, they will move heaven and earth to win an election that they lost. Unbelievable. Like, you lost, bro. 3-time loser. Okay. While the indictment's reference to Trump and Eastman seeking to enlist chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, in their scheme to create fake slates of pro-Trump electors, it is still a big deal. It directly implicates the former president and the Republican establishment in the plan to falsify slates of electors. On about the 8th day of December, Trump and Eastman placed a call to RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel to request her assistance gathering certain individuals to meet and cast electoral votes for Trump in states despite the fact that Trump lost those states. This was another overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Like, unbelievable. This guy works so hard for the wrong stuff. Like, he could have probably implemented basic income, moved us to renewable fuels, maybe even found some more pro-America foreign policy that's a win-win for everybody else as well. Like, he could have done a million things, and yet this is what he spent his energy on, trying to take something that he lost fair and square. This guy's a piece of work. All right, now I'm thinking about, I'm going to call it around halfway through. And if you are finding this useful, do me a solid and hit the like button and share this on social. And if you really want to help, consider becoming a member by clicking the join link on YouTube, like Soldier One, who is our Senior Vice President of Nerds for Humanity, one of our biggest supporters. So thank you, Soldier One. After Soldier One, the next level down is Kristen Slevin and Bike, Vice Presidents. And the hardcore members are the next level down in order of time as members. You got Gene, David, DK, Jekalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Mona, Vaughn, Yang, Dean, Galessa, Jay Perrin, Dana, Jason, Daniel, Mickey, and Unkio. And then at the entry level, just verified for like $2 a month. So anybody watching this can probably afford $1.99 every 30 days to support more nerd content. Lisa, Brandon, Sophia, Doris, Emerald, Ben, Ira, Elizabeth, Shoni, Dr. William, Karen, Mai. Oh, I'm supposed to play some chill music while we do the... There you go. Dr. William, Karen, Mai, Brittany, Lori, Wana, Kevin. Oh, goodness. T, Jeremy, David, Nicholas, Mike, Zig, Roberto, and Jackson. I think I got everybody. Hopefully I got you all. I might have distracted myself by turning this music on, which is now like kind of delayed. All right, let's get back to the indictment. Let's see some chats here. A few steps up the fraud ladder from making up people to sign Kanye's petition to run. Ooh. Steve says, Giuliani was the hub, the wheel, and the grease sliding down the side of his face. Jonathan LeBron, I still remember when Trump tried pushing for 2,000 stimulus checks. Yes, he did. He did. I mean, he could have worked as hard. That would have been amazing, especially if it were universal. It's like here in Virginia, the old R's, they'd at least do what was best for business and revenue. But now it's not even the case. It's all about culture war, pandering nonsense. That is true. And in fairness, I used to be one of the old R's, Ender. I was very much a pro-business, fiscal conservative. And I just feel like the Republican Party, like, kind of, I think Donald Trump ran up the biggest deficit, largest deficit spending, and racked up the most growth in the national debt than any president in the history of America. You know, he likes to say more of this and more of that than any president in the history of America. He has a lot of superlatives when it comes to his administration that are not good. And one of them is spending like a drunken sailor, cutting taxes for the rich, and then increasing spending. You know, Ronald Reagan would not approve. Arez says, it's funny, he was yelling there, stealing the election, when he was in the process of trying to steal the election. Yeah, and sometimes when you see Trump accuse people of something, that's a hint that it might be something that he did. So let's get back to some highlights from this Georgia indictment. And if you were not able to become a member, then hit the like button. Hook a nerd up. All right. Let's see. That was the RNC chair's involvement. On the 10th day of December, Rudy Giuliani committed the felony offense of false statements by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following statements and representations to members of the Georgia House of Representatives present at a House Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. And I remember one of my MAGA family members was saying, hey, are you watching Giuliani testify to some state committee? And I said, well, you know, he can say what he wants, but if he can't bring the evidence, it's just a bunch of talk. And then my MAGA brother was like, well, but Giuliani, you know, obviously would not lie about this stuff. He's under oath. And it's like, well, I bet now he has to prove it that he was not lying. He said that it was quite clear from the State Farm Arena video that the election workers were stealing votes, that Democratic officials got rid of all of the reporters and observers, anyone that couldn't be trusted, using the excuse of a water main break, and went about their dirty, crooked business. Oh, I still remember him saying this crap. that between 12 and 24,000 ballots were illegally counted, that in Michigan, 700,000 more ballots were counted that were sent out to voters, that Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss, and an unidentified man were quite obviously passing around USB ports as if there were vials of heroin or cocaine. Nothing racist there. 96,000 mail-in ballots were counted, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned. And now we know that all of this was BS and that the state of Georgia has investigated all of this, the Trump Attorney General and the Department of Justice and FBI. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Like when you make up stuff that's just complete crazy talk and you have no evidence to back it up, you know what, man? You're going to have some consequences. I don't care if your last name's Trump. You know, this is America. We got rule of law here. Republicans should know all about rule of law. That's what they were chanting. Remember during the BLM stuff, they were like, rule of law, rule of law. It's like, wow. Not when it applies to a small thing like a presidential election. Then the president can do whatever he wants and just make shit up. Unbelievable, this guy. Next. On the 13th of December, Ken Cheesebro sent an email to Mike Roman. The documents were used by Trump presidential elector nominees in New Mexico for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump, despite the fact that Trump lost the election in New Mexico. So another state where they have fake electors. So all that talk you heard from Extreme MAGA about Stop the Steal, and they're making up fake votes. Like, isn't it ironic that the people who were trying to steal, the people who were making up fake electors, were actually the Trumpers, not the Biden people? Unbelievable. Yeah, Rez is right. Laws for these, but not for me. Kemp made a statement today on Twitter to refute Trump's law. Yeah, Kemp has been very clear. He's no bleeding heart liberal. Ira's very pleased, and I have to say I am glad that this is coming to light and people are being held accountable. But I agree with Jackson that this is an indictment. This is a jury saying there's enough to go to trial. This is not the same as a jury saying that he's definitely guilty. But I'll let you decide based on what you know so far. And then we'll all give Trump and Giuliani and Sidney Powell the presumption of innocence. And then we'll see what the court says. On the 13th of December, and stated that Giuliani, quote, wants to keep this quiet until after all the voting is done, in reference to the December 14th meeting of Trump presidential elector nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. Yeah, this is at least a second reference to Mr. Giuliani seeking to limit any widespread knowledge of the fact that slates of electors had been convened to cast votes for Trump. Nothing says transparency like saying that we should keep this quiet until we're done with what we're doing. Yeah, so much for draining the swamp, right? On the 14th of December, Mike Roman sent an email to unindicted co-conspirator 4 and 7. Please send me an update as soon as the state electoral college has adjourned and all paperwork is secured. I mean, they really followed through. I have to admit, they executed this conspiracy better than they executed a lot of things when Trump was president. Oh, Ender says, seeing those old New York con men in a Georgia jail. Yeah, it's going to hit different there. Yeah, there's definitely some rearranging of the swamp by good old Donald J. Trump. Okay, on December 18th, Trump met with Giuliani, Powell, Unindicted co-conspirator 20 discussed certain strategies and theories intended to influence the outcome of the November 3rd presidential election, including seizing voting equipment, appointing Powell special counsel with broad authority to investigate allegations of fraud in Georgia and elsewhere. In the Oval Office, they conspired. It's like, have you no shame? Have you no shame? Okay, on the 25th of December, on Christmas Day, Trump placed a call to Speaker of the House, Rusty Bowers, for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Bowers to unlawfully appoint electors from Arizona. During the call, Bowers stated to Trump, and Bowers, remember, is a Republican, "I voted for you. I worked for you. I campaigned for you. I just won't do anything illegal for you." Think about that. What kind of crazy situation results in a supporter of the president on Christmas Day saying to the president, "Mr. President, I can't do anything illegal for you. I'm sorry. I'm a supporter of yours, but I just can't break the law for you." Unbelievable, right? I wish we had a tape of that call, because I'm sure Trump would have been like, "Oh, you got to do this. Come on. People are talking. People are saying there's fraud everywhere." It's like, bro, you cannot spin your way into a second term when you lost. On the 28th of December, Clark attempted to commit felony offense of false writings in violation by knowingly and willfully making a document known the same to contain false statement that the U.S. Department of Justice had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, including the state of Georgia. So this is a Department of Justice Trump loyalist who sent letters to the state saying that the Department of Justice has identified significant concerns, trying to cast doubt about the results. And if you're like a recipient, you might be like, well, maybe the DOJ and the FBI have found something that I don't know about. But they all know now that this was bull. That Trump basically got one of his, henchmen in the Department of Justice to create the illusion of fraud using Department of Justice letterhead saying, "Hey, we think there's stuff here," so that the states will be like, maybe we shouldn't trust the voters. Unbelievable. This guy's like, he's like Crooked Donald, man. He really is Crooked Donald. On December 31st, Trump and Eastman committed the offense of filing false documents, verified complaint for emergency, injunctive, and declarative relief, and they made false statements that 2,506 felons with an uncompleted sentence voted illegally, 66,000 underage people voted, blah, 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 blah. All this crap that we now know is not true, has no evidence behind it. Earlier that same day, Eastman sent an email admitting his knowledge that at least some of the allegations were not accurate. So the president's own lawyers were like, look, we're saying all this stuff. We all know it's not true. Hello, JC Cat. Hello, nerds. Okay. Lou is right. Trump does get to fundraise money every time he gets indicted. That is sad, but true. Okay, next. Oh, Trump signed a document swearing that all of the information in the suit was accurate, even though his own lawyers had told him it was false. So now they got Trump. They have evidence that Trump's lawyers told him, hey, these things that we're making up for this emergency injunctive relief, it's not really true. There's definitely some stuff in here that's not true. And Trump signs a document swearing that everything in the suit was accurate. He's going to say like, whoa, I don't read anything. I'm just a billionaire. Okay. Then on the 2nd of January, God, this guy is like nonstop. What did he do? Requesting, importuning the Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath of a public officers. This is the infamous phone call in which Mr. Trump told Raffensperger that he needed to, quote, find 12,000 votes to win. Mark Meadows, Trump's White House chief of staff, was also on the line. I just need to find 11,800 votes, which is one more than we need because we won. He's tenacious, this piece of work. Again, like, why wouldn't he spend this energy doing things for the American people? Like, he spends his whole administration playing golf, and then when he loses, he turns into like a workaholic. Unbelievable. Okay, on the 3rd of January, all these people placed multiple telephone calls, sent text messages to each other and individuals involved in the conspiracy, including telephone call to Ruby Freeman, election worker, that was unsuccessful at 7:49. Telephone call to Ruby Freeman, that was unsuccessful. Then tried to call Travion Cootie. Wow, they keep trying Ruby Freeman. These are all trying to get these fake electors, I'm guessing. This passage signals the arrival of one of the more outlandish characters. Travion Cootie was a former publicist to Kanye West who became involved in seeking to pressure one of the Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman, into cooperating with false claims of voter fraud. Okay, so Kanye West's publicist is trying to pressure Ruby Freeman, an election worker, to say, hey, help us say there were false claims. Unbelievable. Crazy. The Trump world is crazy. On the 5th of Jan, Trump placed a call to Pence. During the call, Trump and Eastman attempted to persuade Pence to reject slates of presidential electors or return the slates to the state legislature. So now, when the MAGA people say like, oh, they just wanted Pence to take a pause, take a little time out. Now we know that no. They wanted Pence to reject the official Electoral College voters so that if it went back to the state, they knew the states would now be screwed because they would have these competing slates of electors, the real ones and then the fake ones that the Trump team had made. So remember, if your MAGA media is giving you talking points that like all they wanted to do was just take a beat, just make sure everything's looking on the up and up, remember that meanwhile, weeks prior to that, they had been creating these fake electors, having fake meetings so that if you send back the real ones, it creates a bunch of confusion, and confusion is good and drama is good for Trump, but bad for America. Yeah, I agree with Ira that I don't think Trump has done a lot for the people that have done so much for him. Okay, next. On the 7th of January, Kathleen Latham sent a text message to the COO of Sullivan Strickler with the address for the municipal airport in Coffee County to coordinate picking up Scott Hall from the airport and driving him to the County Board of Elections and Registration Office for the purpose of assisting with the unlawful breach of election equipment. So remember how Sidney Powell was saying like, there are people who hacked into those Dominion machines. And you know who was breaking into election machines? It was the Trump team all along. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Unbelievable. What a piece of work. One of the unique plots charged in this indictment is a scheme to breach voting machines in an effort to gain access to the software code. The plotters, including Trump lawyer Powell, apparently thought obtaining the code could help them prove that the machines had been used in a conspiracy to flip votes away from Trump to Biden. And when they got that code, do we have any evidence? No. Not only did they obtain that code unlawfully, but then when they had it, they came up with goose egg, bunch of tweets. Okay, next. Let's see. 4 Trump lawyers, including Giuliani, were charged with soliciting public officers, specifically a number of Georgia lawmakers, to violate their oaths. This charge pertains to the effort by Trump team to put forward a fake slate of electors. Giuliani was also charged with lying to a Georgia Senate subcommittee about what he claimed were examples of voter fraud. It is a crime to make false statements to public officials. And boy, did he. I mean, this is a guy, remember, who he said, hey, someone asked him, do you have any evidence? He said, well, we don't have any evidence, but we have a lot of theories. It's like, seriously, you're going to try and overturn a presidential election because you have a lot of theories and you don't have any evidence? All right. I believe we are at the 45-minute mark. So I'm going to encourage you to read the full indictment yourself, but hopefully we got through a lot of the goodies. What's the takeaway? The takeaway is that Trump's going to be held accountable. And not just Trump, but Giuliani and Powell and Jenna Ellis and the whole lot of them. And if you're thinking like, well, they were trying to save the country because of all of this fraud, again, I invite them and I welcome them to bring this so-called evidence, because now they're going to be under the Klieg lights, as they say. And whether your hair product is dripping or not, like, you gotta now put up or shut up. And it's been years. So if you have all this evidence, you had years to prepare it. Like, where's the beef? Because the best defense to someone saying that you tried to overturn an election unlawfully is to prove that the election really was stolen by Biden. So we'll wait. Show us the evidence. And we look forward to the rule of law and justice being served. And I'm so happy that even if Trump wins the presidential election, he will not be able to pardon himself, because this is a state law that he's violating. If you found this video useful and this live stream entertaining and educational, can you do me a favor and hit that like button? If you're not subscribed, subscribe, because I'll be doing more of these. You know, it's going to be a very big election. And I'm guessing that either one of Biden or Trump will drop out. So it's going to be exciting. And before we go, let's see who is actually getting the most approval votes on ofthepeople.us, which is kind of like the Yelp for... Oh, thank you, Ira. I appreciate that. And JC Cat, I appreciate that you appreciate it, and I hope you also smashed that like button. Okay, let's see who is trending on Of the People. So we'll start with the Democrats, the one that has the most approval votes. And if you haven't voted, just go to ofthepeople.us and you log in with any like Google account, or I think you can log in with email and password as well. I think you might be able to log in with your Twitter account. Either way, then you just click on these approve buttons, and whoever gets the most approved buttons basically gets sorted higher in the list. And right now on the Democratic side, the top candidates based on total number of approval votes are Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., and Katie Porter. Then Bernie, then Pete, then Gretchen, then Nina, then Joe Biden. So based on approval votes, Joe Biden's not high up there. He's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And on the Republican side, you've got Chris Christie, the most approved Republican, then Glenn Youngkin, who hasn't even announced, then Vivek Ramaswamy. That's pretty strong for Vivek. He's moved up. He wasn't this high before. Number 3, pulling ahead of Nikki Haley. Ooh, Doug Burgum showing up. And then Donald Trump. So Trump is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So neither of the leading candidates have the most approval votes. And overall, I'm pretty sure if you say overall, not surprising given this channel's audience. We have Andrew Yang with the most approval votes, then Marianne, then RFK, then Katie, then Bernie, then Pete, then Gretchen Whitmer. Keep your eyes on Gretchen Whitmer. I have a feeling if Biden has to drop out, Whitmer will be a name to watch. Then Justin Amash, I think he might be a libertarian. Then Nina Turner. The first Republican would be Chris Christie. Ooh, interesting. Chris Christie has more approval votes than Joe Biden. Crazy. And a whole lot of them have more approval votes than... Where the hell is Donald Trump? Oh my God. Donald Trump has less approval votes than Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Youngkin, and Cornel West. So if you don't agree with these this order, you can cast your own approval vote and let it be known. Oh, Jeremy says, hey, I heard through the grapevine that there's an upcoming... Yes, that is correct, Jeremy. Someone on Twitter was messaging me saying, hey, look, like, you're not really talking about RFK enough. Why don't we have a debate? And I was like, I don't really want to have a debate. I mean, I'm happy to have a active conversation with you, but why don't you come on the show and we'll talk about them. Talk about why you like them. I do find it interesting that I think there are probably more Republicans supporting RFK Jr. than Democrats, so I'm wondering why RFK Jr. doesn't run in the Republican primary. But irrespective of that, I much personally prefer Buttigieg, Whitmer, Chris Christie. You know, there's tons of people who are really compelling and smart. But yeah, to answer your question, Jeremy, we will be having a RFK Jr. supporter in the Nerd Zone, and I'm sure they'll bring a lot of points about why RFK is good, and I'll be ready to learn and keep an open mind. All right. Lou says, I'd vote for Whitmer over Newsom. Yeah. I mean, actually, a Whitmer-Newsom combo could be good. A Buttigieg-Whitmer combo could be good. Ira saying, I would never vote for any of the right-wingers. Yes. I don't consider Chris Christie a right-winger. Or Mitt Romney, not a right-winger. They're like old-school Republicans, like kind of pro-business, small government, like pretty reasonable. But yeah, the Trump has basically destroyed the Republican Party. It's smaller and smaller, and he keeps losing. He's a 3-time loser, right? After Trump was elected, he barely won. He lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton, which he says was because of fake votes. But like, look it's ironic given who's saying that. Then he lost the House while he was president. And then he lost his re-election. And then he also lost, he was not able to seize the Senate, even though, you know, the Biden administration was kind of like struggling with inflation. So he's really a 3-time loser. And if the Republicans nominate him and he loses again, those few remaining Republicans are going to be convinced the system is rigged because that's what he keeps saying. And here we are. So now there is a scenario where both Biden, imagine this, both Biden and Trump. Oh, I need to put on my going away music. There's a scenario where both Biden and Trump, either because of health or scandal reasons, have to suddenly drop out. I know so many people who would be thrilled if both Biden and Trump had to drop out. And then you'd have a real primary. And you might get something crazy like Vivek versus Whitmer. Wouldn't that be exciting to watch? Like, or Christie versus Buttigieg. Like, man, that would be epic. And then we could have a real freaking, like, fresh perspective. So, hope springs eternal. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think of this Georgia indictment. Do you feel like all of those allegations were completely manufactured by the deep state? Or do you think that Trump really was up to no good and doing some shenanigans with old Giuliani and Powell? God, the dream team. What do you call them? The elite strike force. God help us. All right, with that, I'm going to say goodbye, nerds. Goodbye, nerds.